This week's Bonaire dive news includes the latest on stony coral tissue loss disease, a new fence at Torrey's Reef, more coral spawning activity, heightened awareness around recompression, and more Facebook links, this time around marine life identification. Plus, weather, dive-related events you may find interesting, and we're highlighting some terrific underwater creatures seen on the island in the last week. Let's jump in. After conducting surveys across the marine park to determine where stony coral tissue loss disease is currently, STNAPA updated their coral disease presence map, adding just 2 additional sites. Reef Scientifico switched from green to orange, which makes sense because La Machaca has been orange for several weeks. They also added Jenny's Reef on Klein Bonaire. Assuming no more updates this week, it would seem to be a good sign that the disease isn't spreading north and south as quickly as it has. Also, with most of the Kryland Dike sites red and orange, we've noticed an uptick in diving activity north and south of the impacted areas, which is nice to see. However, that does mean a few more trucks and divers at those spots, especially when Salt Pier is occupied. And remember to disinfect your gear at the end of each day. Speaking of dive sites, the fence in front of the sluice gate at Torrey's Reef has been extended. It doesn't really impact the south entry points, but it does go to the rubble pile on the north side. So, it's a slightly longer walk to the lagoon. If you see any of these star-shaped things while diving, please don't touch them. Reef Renewal Bonaire posted on Facebook that these substrates are transplanted to the reef when the tiny coral larvae that have settled on them are still very small and therefore impossible to see with the naked eye. Though microscopic, baby corals are living, sensitive organisms. Also, per the Carmabi coral spawning prediction calendar, there is another round of grooved brain coral spawning coming up in 2 weeks. Come back next week for all the details. Dr. George Matuk, one of the recently hired physicians to help reopen Recompression Center Bonaire, has begun a series of articles in the Bonaire Reporter to help improve understanding of diving fitness and how to avoid decompression injuries. The first installment mentions that hyperbaric oxygen therapy is not only used for decompression sickness, but has also shown great effectiveness in the treatment of conditions such as gangrene, carbon monoxide poisoning, wound healing, radiation injuries, hearing and vision loss, anemia, and tissue grafting. Who knew? Although he teases the phrase, upon opening in the near future, the center is not quite open yet. As soon as it does, we'll let you know. In the meantime, recompressionchamberbonaire.com has lots of information about their services. One of the comments we get quite a bit on our shore dive collection videos is the appreciation for the names of everything in the sea life section. Whenever we come across a creature we don't know off the top of our head, we start to look around. So, to continue our series on helpful links, here are a few Facebook groups you might check to identify whatever's in that photo you took. We will start out pretty generic with the ID Please Marine Creature Identification group. Post whatever underwater creature you can't identify. Often, users will point you in the right direction if they don't know. There are several groups that focus just on fish, including All Fish Species Identification, Fish ID Group, and Fish ID photos and videos. Post in those, and you should get an answer pretty quick. But what if you have something that isn't a fish? No problem. The Crustacean Identification Group should be able to help with lobsters, crab, and shrimp, and the Coral Q&A group is pretty self-explanatory. You may think the Mollusk Appreciation and ID group only handles clams, oysters, and snails. But did you know that nudibranchs, octopus, and squid are also members of the mollusk family? Finally, we couldn't find any Facebook groups focusing on underwater sponge identification. If you know any, or end up starting one, please let us know in the comments section below. Next week, the lows should average 81 degrees, with 88 degrees being the average high. The sun will rise at 6:07 and set at 6:56 on Sunday, but you can add a minute to both of those by the end of the week. The chances of rain are highest midweek, and the wind picks up toward the end of the week. This view of the Buddy Dive Resort Pier gives you a pretty good idea of what to expect, both for cloud cover and wind speed. If it's Sunday, it's Reef Renewal Bonaire's weekly presentation in Blenny's restaurant at Buddy Dive Resort. They do a ton of coral restoration work around the island and have multiple educational opportunities, including this presentation. Check out last week's Bonaire Dive news to see what they did for the grooved brain coral spawning. Amazing! Facebook.com/Reef Renewal Bonaire and reefrenewalbonaire.org have more information. The Ostracods are coming. Typically, the best viewing is 3 to 7 days following a full moon, which in this case is June 3rd. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage to show you because they are very difficult to capture with average digital cameras, which means this is truly something to experience in person. Check out almost any of the local dive shops for their guided ostracod dives, or, if you fancy your own private show, try to be in the water swimming around Gorgonians about 45 minutes after sunset. If you don't know what ostracods are, there are a few links below for more information. Thursday, June 8th, is World Ocean Day, and while we aren't aware of any particular scheduled events, it is an auspicious day to get in the water and create some lasting memories. Lastly, trash continues to find its way to coastlines, and Bonaire's consistent trade winds mean it can easily blow into the water, negatively impacting the reef and sea life. Fortunately, groups like 1 Hour Cleanup Power make it their mission to collect land-based trash before it gets into the water. Join them on Saturday and help clean up Bonaire's marine park from land. You can find out more at onehourcleanuppower.one or check facebook.com/onehourcleanuppower for the latest planned location. Our highlights this week show off some of the spectacular sea life found around Bonaire. And we'll start with some sweet yellow seahorse footage from Michael Maresca. I don't know how, but Chris Hall found this incredible nurse shark resting at the bottom of a small rocky cave. Although this isn't a video, Nico Bachman's photo was too good to ignore, because we don't see nudibranchs here very often. It could be either a Lynx fidania or an orange and white Chthona. Finally, we'll close this out with a very rare manta sighting on the north end of the island. Kudos to Danny Brinkman for sharing. I wonder what incredible sea life will be swimming around Bonaire next week. Come back and find out. So, if you've been here for all 4 episodes, you can see we're still refining things. But it seems to be coming together. Hopefully, they're getting better. If you think so, consider hitting the subscribe button to get notified when we release next week's episode. Thanks! Smiley face.